amazing attendees.
Okay, I'm going to take that word attendee back. These are our friends.
That's
Jennifer,
right.
Marie, Terry, thanks for joining us today.
Indeed. I'm going to get a spot lit here, and then we'll kick things off in just 1 second. I had hoped to write a carol this year for Death-to-Tyrants Day, but I never got around to it. So, as you might not be surprised to know, it's been kind of a busy year so far. How's your day going, Derek? Let's actually get this thing rolling for good, and then we'll jump into the pleasantries. We are live. So everybody on social, we're going to get rolling in just 1 second. For those of you on the bridge, if you're not yet on the bridge, visit reconverge.io and you can find the Running Into the Fog link. Get registered and join us over here and have a chance to join the bridge in the second half of the hour. We're going to get this going right now and recording in 3, 2, 1. Hey, Derek. Happy March 13th, the observed day of Death-to-Tyrants Day 2024, at least the day we're observing, because today's the day we do the live stream. So how are you?
I'm good. Better than I was 4 years ago on this day. Wasn't around this time 4 years ago when the world started to shut down?
Almost exactly 4 years ago, right around now, yeah. I remember about a month beforehand making the difficult decisions around Reconverge 2020 and having to postpone, I think was the operative word at that point in time, until the fall and see what happened in the meantime. And it ended up being a cancellation, then actually a wind down of the learning and conference business altogether. But as we're bouncing back from that, welcome to Running Into the Fog today, everyone, with the Johnson brothers. I'm Eric Johnson. This is my baby brother, Derek, and we are here to celebrate with you. We have no guests today, other than you folks who are joining us online. So we are celebrating today the auspicious, what would you call it? Victory of freedom and liberty over tyranny and authoritarianism, or at least we hope it will continue to go down that way. And I have a couple of topics that I've selected for us to talk about. But if you would like to join the bridge and actually join our panel today, let us know in the chat. In order to do that, you have to be on the webinar bridge. Those of you over on social, jump over to reconverge.io, get registered, and jump on the bridge here with us. We've got quite a few people actually joining us today on the webinar bridge, lots of familiar faces and names out there. So for those of you who want to join the panel in the second half, Derek and I are going to talk about the unthinkable here in the first 30 minutes, and then we'll switch over to unspeakable. And you guys can join us. We'll cut the social streams so that your reputations will remain intact, and you'll only be preserved for posterity on the private recording. So with that, Derek, any preamble words before we get our program underway today?
Not really. I think last Thursday night when we were at the UW-Madison School of Business, that question that we finished with on one of the introductory slides around how, I believe the question went something like, can you enjoy the battle as much as you enjoy the victory? I'm thinking about that question as it relates to today's podcast. Because whether it be the two of us or our listeners out there, our guests today, every day we get up, we kind of go to battle, whether it be, to serve our customers, build better products, mousetraps, etc., or have better interactions with our stakeholders and shareholders. And it's not every day that we get a victory, but almost every day, I imagine there's some form of battle.
Right on. Well said. The 15th of March, this Friday, is the Death-to-Tyrants Day, which we have been, well, I don't know about me. I have been very eagerly celebrating these last several years. And the reason is because our society is really based on personal sovereignty and liberty and freedom. And back a couple thousand years ago, when Caesar was judged by the rest of the Senate to be in violation of those principles, of the Roman Republic, so to speak. Don't call it a democracy. And the rest of the Senate rose up around him and, well, murdered him. And it's kind of interpretive that we even call it a murder in that case, whether political violence is always considered murder or not, I guess is debatable. It usually is. But the term sic semper tyrannis, thus always unto tyrants, typifies sort of the attitude around that and the fact that government may have a monopoly on violence, but it's the people that the government ultimately work for and report to, or it should be anyway. And so we really celebrate Death-to-Tyrants Day, or rather, necessarily that you raise the black flag and have the kind of celebrations at your house that my children have grown accustomed to over the last few years anyway. But we celebrate this idea of defiance and rebellion, really, against the powers that be and those that would seek to control us and really even control what we think and say. And so I've got three very carefully chosen examples of that type of tyranny that we want to kind of walk through here today. But again, if you'd like to join the panel and have the proclivity to jump on and talk with us in person, just let us know. We see a lot of folks on the bridge here that are familiar names, a couple of new folks out there. Welcome. Always welcome to have new people out there. But the place that I wanted to kind of get started today, and I know, feel free to, defer on to get our audience thinking a little bit, was the World Health Organization. And the World Health Organization a few years ago made a bit of a name for themselves when they encouraged, I think is probably the right word, the governments of the world to take certain therapeutic directions that would involve rather less than voluntary compliance with certain health parameters that may or may not have had to do with a pandemic. So for those of you for whom the pandemic is still fresh in your mind, by the way, I wear the disobey shirt with pride today because I was considered myself a member of the control group when it came to that sort of thing. But the World Health Organization has a pandemic treaty that's currently under consideration by several nations, and a few nations have already rejected it. The United States has not yet rejected it, I will add. Many countries in Europe have indicated that they are likely to sign on to the WHO's pandemic treaty. And the pandemic treaty would feature a few very specific actions which would supersede national sovereignty over one's own territorial governance and population. And so I guess, Derek, how does that make you feel to think that the nation that you are a citizen of might surrender its sovereignty to a transnational organization with a policy that you might not necessarily agree with, but which might be forced upon you, whether or not you voted for it with the unelected bureaucracy that may or may not be in control of your future?
Well, gosh, I don't know nearly enough about this topic, but it sure wouldn't make me feel very good.
Right on. Well, this is the Human Rights Watch, and Human Rights Watch goes to some lengths to describe the draconian nature of the WHO's pandemic treaty and the fact that the real opportunity here that I think the people in control see as being the principal motivator behind this is to get a unified and much more immediate response should disease X, so to speak, break out. And obviously, the nature of whether or not compliance is done on a national basis or a supranational basis is one that I think is debatable. But this pandemic treaty is one that I think creates a lot of opportunity for abuse. Should that be something that national governments would care to engage in. So if you have questions or comments about this, feel free to jump into the chat. I think I saw a comment just now about that. Jennifer, sorry, you don't have time for a political discussion. That's all right. This is not political. In fact, we're apolitical. I sort of recognize my own political proclivities tend to be of the anarchist variety. So glad you joined us for what you could, Jennifer. But if you have questions or comments on this idea around the enforcement of international health standards, feel free to jump in. Derek, any further thoughts on the pandemic, the treaty, the WHO?
I don't know. I think it's it would be a shame if on a country by country basis that the independent thought process were to disappear. To take into account the evaluation of what's best for one country versus another. That's a much bigger discussion than we have time for today. Again, to Jennifer's point, I don't see that as a political discussion as much as it is a maintenance of choice, discussion based upon where we happen to live. That's my personal view on it, and again, trying to remain independent.
Well, then why don't we take my second topic, and that is the topic of central bank digital currencies, also known as CBDCs. CBDCs are seen, I think, by many central banks as the ability to make money programmable and to make that programmable money spendable on certain commodities and not spendable on certain other commodities. And today, I think, at least here in the United States, we like to think of ourselves as being free to spend our money on whatever we want. Wouldn't you say that's more or less your assumption, Derek? You can spend your money on whatever you want?
Yeah, I mean, I still think it fits into categories such as needs versus wants. And you, as a household, maybe this is where the government hasn't been a great role model. You have to maintain some type of budget, that allows your numbers to work out at the end of the month. And I'm self-proclaimed finance guy here, so take that for what it's worth. But a balanced budget at a household level doesn't seem to necessarily parlay over into a balanced budget in other worlds, corporate environments, governmental, you name it. But yeah, overall, I believe that I can spend it on whatever I want, given certain restrictions around the amount of money there is to spend overall.
But if it's your money, your general assumption is you can spend it how you like.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, that might not be the case if it's a central bank digital currency, which may be limited in how it can be spent. So, for example, let's linger for a moment over the potential of a carbon credit system. You use carbon, you create carbon in the process of living your life, just like I do. And if there is a great deal of carbon created by, I don't know, we're about to fly to Nashville here in a few weeks. We're going to create a certain amount of carbon in the atmosphere as a result of our flying to Nashville. And if that certain amount of carbon exceeds the amount of carbon that's in our allotment for that particular period of time, the money that we might spend on another plane ticket to produce a similar amount of carbon might not be allowed. Now, they can't do that right now with existing capital controls over how we might spend the money or the credit that might appear in your credit card statement that you might have access to. But they could if the money was programmable. So making money incapable of being spent towards certain types of activities, such as the consumption of travel, should you have exceeded your allotment of carbon credits, is a good example of the type of control that a central bank digital currency might impose over our common life. But you can expand that to whatever you like. If you've, I understand, like me, you're trying to lose a little weight here this spring. Is that still an accurate assumption, or did you make your weight that you're trying to lose?
Still an accurate assumption.
All right. So let's say the opinion is that you need to lose 10 pounds, and that will involve the reduction of the consumption of certain kinds of food. or other nutritional intake? What if your money was not any longer good for buying certain kinds of food that might be unhealthy for you, or alcohol, or cigarettes, or name your vice? That's the risk, I think, that we place ourselves at when a central bank has direct access over the currency units that we control, or so to speak. Obviously, central bank digital currency is one of those topics that makes it very easy to control policy from the government, and according to government policy, what the population is then permitted to do as a result. And policy is not law necessarily. So this does supersede the legislative process in the sense that there are certain regulations which we might need to comply with, which are not necessarily part of the greater legal framework under which we are governed. So that's topic number 2, is CBDCs. I saw a couple comments in chat, by the way. Let me stop my share so I can see them. Terry chimed in, if there is a parallel with the tension federal and states' rights. Yeah, I think there is a parallel there, that federalism itself was agreed to by the states on the basis of a national constitution. Terry, as a esquire, as an attorney, I think you'd agree that the agreement on the part of the states to be part of the United States was really foundational to the presence of a national constitution that would govern that liberty and limit the government's oversight and infringements upon that liberty, which, by the way, the Constitution is not a guarantee of your rights. It is a limit of the government's ability to oversee and restrain or restrict those rights. So great comment, Terry. Love it. And Luis says he's counting on drinking that beer with us in Nashville for sure. Luis, looking forward to it. In fact, I'm on the wagon at the moment right now because of Lent. For the first time since the pandemic hit, I ended up giving up alcohol until Easter Sunday. So we'll be long past Easter Sunday by the time we see you in Nashville. Terry's remark, all rights not specifically enumerated to the federal government are reserved to the states. Indeed, indeed. Good stuff. Keep those comments coming, everybody. Derek, any further thoughts on the CBDC topic?
I don't think so. I might have a few more comments on your third topic here.
All right. Topic number 3 for us to consider today is freedom of expression itself. And obviously, we live in an era now where expressing our opinions and thoughts and feelings online is something that most of us do from time to time. In fact, I would say we're doing it right now, aren't we? That we're expressing our displeasure at the folks who might restrain our ability to exercise our liberty and freedom. I believe that's probably not only a sort of an act of rebellion, it's an act of expression. And so here in the United States, of course, we have the First Amendment, which guarantees the right of free association and free expression of our ideas, and limits the government's ability to infringe upon those rights. And as such, allows us to have unpopular opinions. The unpopular opinions that we express in public can be the source of great consternation for those who don't want those opinions to be present. And depending upon the policy sway of those who control the apparatus to permit or prevent those types of expressions to be made both online and in person, will variably be expressed over our ability to do that. So Amnesty International has isolated freedom of expression as one of those topics that, if you dig into it, is under attack right now. The ability to say what you want, what you believe, what you hold dear, your values, is something that I think we've traditionally, in the West at least, considered to be sacrosanct, something that we protect quite vociferously. The saying that I may not agree with you, but I'll defend to the death your right to disagree, including my dog who just joined the conversation. Derek, please take over for a second while I get him out of here.
Sure thing. You know, I had a recent opportunity to help my seventh grade daughter come up with a topic for basically the equivalent of a TED Talk at her school. She happens to go, this part is not necessarily important to the story, but she happens to go to a Christian-based middle school, seventh grade. And she came home one day saying, I've got this assignment from my teacher to do this TED Talk. And I chose freedom of speech in religion. And I said, great, what are you going to talk about? And after several back and forths, she decided that that was not the most exciting talk that she might be able to give. I changed her mind, and we kept the general theme, but we changed it from religion to sports. And if our listeners, like myself, maybe yourself, Eric, did you watch the Super Bowl this year?
I watched about the last couple minutes and then the overtime
Yep.
of Super Bowl.
Well, there was this phenomenon throughout this NFL season that became just as much about Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce as it was about good football being played on the football field, right? And Travis Kelce at one point in that game was upset around the number of passes or touches that he might have been getting in the game itself, and he quite aggressively went up to his, I'm going to call him rather elderly, at least elderly appearing head coach, a guy by the name of Andy Reid, and got in his face. And there's imagery out there on the open sources, that shows this 6'5", 250-pound strapping tight end for the Kansas City Chiefs, not only almost knocking his head coach over, but shouting with a lot of energy, shall we say, in his face. I don't know that the details around what Travis Kelce might have said to his coach in that moment were ever made public, but it basically gave my daughter a lot of material that she could cite around the whole notion of, if you're a professional athlete, you've been given, not gifted, because you arguably worked hard for the privilege to build this, but you've been given a platform to share your belief system, your opinions about certain things, and the whole world might be watching in some of those moments. Well, in that moment, there was, depending on the angle that you came at it from, there was some reason to believe that Travis Kelce may not necessarily have been the best role model for young people who were tuning into this once a year Super Bowl game. And she extended it not just to the Super Bowl, but to the Olympics that are coming up this summer. Obviously, she didn't have a ton of content yet for that. Did cite some statistics around, the ages of the population that make up the 40 to 50% of those watching tend to be sub 24 to 26-year-olds. Again, more of the impressionable youngsters might be paying attention to that type of thing. But, that was just a recent experience I had. And it was frankly kind of fun to help my, she was 12 at the time, 12-year-old daughter sort of come up with some content for a school project.
Well, I think it's really important, that you did that, Derek. And in fact, teaching our children what expectations they should have from those who are around us, especially role models like those in athletics or entertainment, is a really, really important principle, I think, of being a parent. So bravo to you on that one. Personally, I think I'm not sure if you ever would have let one of your student athletes speak to you the way Travis Kelce spoke to his coach. I'm guessing not. But then you're not a multimillionaire dating Taylor Swift either.
Right.
So is that, I guess, a justifiable modification of circumstances that allows someone in that position to get away with, quote unquote, that type of behavior, particularly when impressionable young people everywhere are looking up to that person and perhaps emulating what it is they see them doing?
Maybe I could take you back to a story, since you said, would I let my student athlete get away with it? I'll tell you a story real quick. I've got a 17-year-old son who probably when he was in second grade. Let's say it was 10 or so years ago, playing flag football. Ended up on 3 different occasions, basically running so fast that he plowed the kid over. And instead of pulling the flag, he turned it into a game of tackle. And, the referee called a penalty on him 3 straight times. And on the third time, my young son said, "You're not the boss of me," to the referee. And guess what happened? He didn't, the ref didn't do anything other than come up to let me know that my player, he didn't know that that was my kid, did that. But I sat him the entire rest of that game, half of the next game, and I made him write a letter to that referee apologizing.
That's
So
awesome.
I tend not to let that type of thing slide because I think it's, I don't know. I just think it's a missed opportunity if you don't try to help the student athlete understand where their behavior could have been improved.
Well, it's a great story and example, Derek, of what authority means. Authority means they are the boss of you. Thank you very much. In the case of the ref and the player on the field, if the ref's going to give him a penalty and he has that sort of response, I'm actually probably quite impressed with the ref's grace in not ejecting him from the game at that point, because he would have been well within his authority, right, to eject him from the game. Am I wrong?
Probably. Although, look, we're playing
I know
second grade flag football.
It's not like it's life and death on the line or anything, but it is norms and behaviors that are being exercised there, and you exercised your authority in encouraging your child to do the right thing and to recognize the fact that they were the beneficiary, of quite a bit of grace and understanding on the part of that other authority who was placed in governance of their behavior, which is the point.
Yeah. Had it not been my kid, I still would have kicked him out for the remaining second half of that game and the first part of the second. The fact is, as a parent coach, had it not been my kid, I probably would not have mandated that athlete on my team write the letter that I had my young son write. Right. So Benji was gifted a little bit extra just because of his old man being one of the coaches.
Yeah. Well, I think, Derek, that's a great example of why we need to think about tyranny in the modern era today. It's not something that just happened 2,000 years ago in the Roman Republic. This is something that happens all over today. The Amnesty International story actually cites Egypt as a very dangerous place to disagree with government. And that, if they have the ability to declare you a member of a terrorist organization, that might be real bad, not only for you, but for all those other stakeholders in your life that rely on you as, breadwinner and head of household, or, a portion of their livelihood is earned as a result of the activities that you're involved in. And if you're doing things that are simply unpopular and not illegal, that creates a tremendous amount of moral hazard on the part of the legal system in terms of its governance over its people. So we got about 1 minute for you social folks to join us over here on the bridge before we cut you loose. And for those of you who are on the bridge, if you'd like to join the panel for Unspeakable, raise your hand now, and we'll get you added in. And you can join this conversation with Derek and I about Death-to-Tyrants Day and all that goes into it. If we don't have any takers, I'm prepared to end it here, Derek. End us here a little bit early this week, given the holiday nature. I will just remind you, and I think this is no longer a problem for us, but as an S corporation, our tax return is actually due on Death-to-Tyrants Day, the Ides of March, so to speak. The 15th day of the third month is when corporations have to file their income taxes. Not that income taxes are tyranny, by the way. I'll just express that straight out there. In fact, it is... I can't remember where it is, but it's not in the Constitution that we have a right to our pre-tax income. I discovered that the other day in looking into the rights and liberties of us as income earners, and discovered we actually do not have a right to our pre-tax income as Americans. That is not ours. So I guess we'll find out. What'd you drop in there? Oh, you
For
have
anybody.
us tomorrow before we cut people loose, right?
Yep.
You
I
want me to?
know that. Well, you can bring it up if you like. Just wanted to make everybody aware of my monthly webinar series, really kind of invoking this paper you wrote, Eric, close to 20 years ago, around the top 12 application priorities of competitive intelligence. Tomorrow's topic is how to use competitive sims. It's really as a strategic probabilities and possible futures type of topic tomorrow. My good friend Tim Smith and a lady who I've gotten to know over the last few weeks in preparation for this topic, really kind, really smart lady named Mary McCarthy is going to be joining us. So I invite anybody listening in to consider tuning in. If you register, obviously I know it's 24 hours away, so you may not be able to rearrange your schedule to join it live, but if you register, you'll get a copy of the recording. I invite you to do so.
See, you've got 133 RSVP'd on LinkedIn alone. That's awesome. That's an awesome turnout.
Pretty good. I think
Amazing.
it just shows that kind of planning for the future and understanding how you place your bets, when real capital is on the line, is an important topic still in this field.
For sure, for sure. Well, I don't see anyone from our audience who'd like to take the risk on Unspeakable with us, but know that these are the three things that really kind of jumped out at me right now as being things for us as free citizens, sovereign citizens in our own right to be thinking about, we need to worry about. I think the notion that my own medical decisions, my own financial decisions, and my own expressive decisions are still within my own governance is a pretty important priority. And so I would encourage you all to think a little bit more strongly about that yourselves as you think about maintaining and retaining that liberty. And with that, Derek, do you have any final words for our running into the fog audience here today? Otherwise, we'll give people back the time.
Yep. I think the only final word would be some of you have asked. We've given updates before about this book that we've been writing, The Missionary and the Mercenary, and it continues to come along. We're making progress every week. Really excited about being able to bring a book out into the open because of the complexity of that project. It's not just coming up with a physical book, but the audio book element of it is in many ways a separate project all unto itself. It may take a little while yet, but I think at the end of the day, we'll have a much better set of options for our readers, our listeners of The Missionary and the Mercenary to tune in. So thank you for everybody that's provided support to us throughout this almost 2-year journey of bringing this book into the open. We appreciate you for that and look forward to continuing to make progress over the coming weeks.
Amen to that. Hopefully next week we'll have a book cover more or less locked in, and we might even start leaking that. I don't know.
Maybe.
It's up to you.
Maybe.
Up to you if you want to leak that before it goes live.
Hope everybody has a good rest of your week.
Sic semper tyrannis, Derek. Thus always unto tyrants, may death follow them. And for those tyrants in the world, I hope you fail. That's my solemn prayer. There's a whole lot of tyranny in the world yet today, even in our modern era. And it's something that we as free citizens need to be mindful of and very protective of. Our liberties are in many ways all we've got to bind us, and the freedoms that we enjoy here, even being able to associate and express ourselves in something as silly as a live stream and Zoom bridge are one great example of that. So Derek, thank you. Everybody who joined us today, thank you. And we'll see you next time on Running into the Fog.